Brother Musa, assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Thank you very much for coming to see us today and
Welcome.
share your story with us.
It's a pleasure.
Now, Musa is not your original name. You adopted this name after you embraced Islam, right?
That's right, yeah.
Why Musa in particular?
I think two reasons. One of them, I used to be called Martin by my parents. And first of all, I thought that calling myself a Muslim name would introduce me to my world, to the world how I am and how I like to be seen. And second of all, because it was easy to pronounce as well by my Danish friends and family and so on. So at this day today, it's many years ago since I converted, and basically it's just my parents who called me my former name. Everyone else called me Musa. Yeah.
Now, you've been a Muslim since 1999.
Yeah, that's right.
How did you make that journey? Well, how did you get to know about Islam and become interested in it?
I think Islam caught me at some point. I was 18. I moved out of my parents' place. I had this idea that the Western life was about having fun, doing parties, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every week. So I had my own place. And I ended up in a student's hostel. And this place were a place for everyone from northern Denmark in, is it called Færøerne and Iceland. All of them, when they want to study in Copenhagen, they move to this particular hostel. So as a matter of fact, I didn't know anyone and I couldn't speak. Some of them had a strange language as well. So I was a little bit by myself. And I started to think, is this life just about having fun, doing parties, having a good job, making myself a family and so on? And it felt a little bit empty. And I remember, you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they come, they knock on the door and so on. And they went to my place a few times. And obviously they asked about my view of the life and so on. And what happened was I became friends with two Muslims over there. And
they were staying in the hostel?
They were staying in the hostel, yeah. And even though they were from Iran, they were not particularly practicing Muslims. But they had some very good values. And so what happened was I became curious, interested. I remember after a year, start asking them questions. Why are you different than my Danish friends? Why are you so humble? Why you give away your whatever they had, inviting me for food and so on. So I started becoming a little bit curious. And I remember one day I asked this brother particularly, why are you Muslims? Why are you different and so on? And he invited me into his little apartment. And he became very serious. He was not serious at all. He had me to sit down and he wanted to explain. The problem was he didn't know anything about Islam. So whatsoever. Yeah.
A Muslim not knowing anything about his own religion.
Yeah, he said something about Islam. You had to think about how you live. We have a prophet. We have a holy book. And he explained something about Mecca. And I thought it was just like maybe an introduction to some kind of explanation. And he didn't knew anything at all. So, and it was a crucial time as well, because in that day, religion, discussion about life, it was a taboo in a way. And the way that I've been raised by my parents, when you want some answers, you should get them. So when I finally asked him, what is Islam? He couldn't reply me anything. He couldn't explain something. And that question just sat in my mind. Why are people Muslims? What is Islam? And what is the purpose of life? And I was walking around with this thought for a while. And by accident, I stumbled into a young Pakistani brother. I heard some stories about him. And I was curious about his decision, because he lived like modern Western life. And for some reason, he just turned around, became practicing Muslim.
So he was originally Westernized, but then
yeah,
reverted.
And then he not reverted. He was a Muslim from the birth, but he was not practicing at that moment. And he began practicing. He began doing salah, making Ramadan, fasting, and so on. And I heard a story about him because at the time I was working in a clothing company at a warehouse. And I was very fond of how I looked and always having new clothes and so on. And I heard a story that one day he decided that he wants to go the right path and he wants to nothing to do with haram and so on. So he emptied his closet because some of the clothes that he had was stolen. And so he took all of these expensive clothing, which was not halal, and he just threw them away. And I heard the story about him, and I became curious because I knew that I spent all my money on clothing. And I said to myself, okay, this guy, he must have some answers. And I met him by accident.
Was he a worker in that factory?
No.
He wasn't.
He wasn't. I was working in other place as well, and he lived near that place. So I heard about him, and our path, they just met at some point. And I asked him, said, I have 2 Iranian friends. We were speaking about Islam, talking about Islam, and they couldn't give me any answers. Later, he explained to me that he was actually in a process of trying to do his best to convey the Islamic message to other people, but he hadn't had the chance yet. So he was making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that someone will come to him and ask him questions. And yeah.
So he had his prayer fulfilled, answered.
Yeah. So wow. Yeah, I met him a few days after, and he explained to me in, what can you say, general terms, what is Islam? Islam is a way of life. Islam is not just a religion, not your relationship with God subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also your relationship to other people, to yourself, and your whole life. And I had this feeling that he knew what he was talking about. So after a few hours explaining to me, I was curious, listening. He invited me for some food. And we took to a place not far away from here. And I remember sitting in this shawarma place. And we were sitting small tables over each other. And suddenly his voice began to change. And he was becoming a little bit angry, speaking a little bit louder. And he was speaking in general terms, something like, we Muslims, we have to be serious. We have to do more in our religion. We have to be steadfast and so on. And
talking I was thinking, to you or to himself?
That was the question. So I was thinking, is he talking to me or is he talking to somebody else? So I was looking around and I was seeing 2 young brothers sitting behind me. And they was just like sitting and thinking, wow, this is a speech for them also. So I said to myself, okay, this guy is serious. He wants to.
He was talking to them.
Also, yeah. So we had this relationship, friendship, and we met for around a month, every single day, discussed Islam, Aqidah, evolution theory, life after death, and so on. Every single day for about a month, 4, 5, 6 hours every day.
Like an intensive course.
Yeah. And in the beginning, I was curious. Said, this is exciting. I was coming back to I lived at my parents' place at that time. I was moving back. Coming back to my parents, I met this guy and we discussed this and that. And it was interesting. After a few weeks, I could feel that I didn't have a problem with the issue of God and creation and so on. But I do have a problem with me being a Muslim because I could see where this was going.
You have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah, he introduced me to a friend also from Jordan. And they were very keen, meeting with me every day, giving me discussions, proofs, arguments, and so on. And I said to myself, this is very convincing, but I couldn't see myself as a Muslim. So I was 19, I was very young. So they had arguments like Islam has answers to everything. There's proof of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is a miracle, is proof. It's His own words. It's not from humans. So I said to myself, okay, if I can find something that will contradict the way that they spoke, anything, then I could prove to them that Islam is not universal. It doesn't have answers to issues today. There are things in the human life where Islam doesn't fit and so on. So I started going to the library. This was in the beginning of the internet times.
Searching for a fault.
Searching for a fault, yeah. And I tried my best. And I remember coming to these brothers and asked them questions about philosophy. And they said, okay, we don't know that. We can't answer. We'll get back to you tomorrow. And I went home and I was like, okay, now I had them. Maybe there's no proof. Maybe I found a fault. Came back the next day explaining the answers that they found. And after this intensive month, I had no arguments. I didn't really know how to be a practicing Muslim because all we discussed was Aqidah, Tawheed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran as well.
The fundamentals.
The fundamentals, yeah. So I said to myself, okay, I'm convinced. I will become Muslim, but 19, that's still very young. Maybe I'll wait a few years. Maybe I'll have a big tattoo, have some more parties, wait for this decision to come. And I remember that these two brothers, they drove me around in a very old car. Sometimes we pushed it just to get it started. And I remember thinking, okay, everyone has to die. So what if one of these trip back home to my parents in this old car would be my last time in a car? What would happen? And I thought to myself, okay, if I'm convinced of the message of Islam, I also am convinced about life after death, Yom al-Qiyamah, Judgment Day, Jannah, Jahannam. So I said to myself, when I'm going to die, because every humans are, what if I will die in a stage where in my heart, in my mind, I'm convinced, but haven't taken the decision yet? And I became scared. I remember going back home. I couldn't sleep at night. I was worried. It was like an internal fight. My mind was somewhere, my heart, my emotions, my needs were somewhere else. And this went on for maybe a week, 10 days maybe. One day, we were sitting late Saturday night, meeting some other young Muslims. And I remember that these two brothers that I had a very good relationship with, one of them, because this was like a place for young people. So the one Pakistani brother, he was playing table tennis. And the other one from Jordan, he was having a political discussion about Palestine and how to solve the issue. And I was sitting there by myself, looking around and trying to socialize with these brothers that I didn't know. And everyone was so kind and everyone was so welcoming and so on. And that maybe be the last psychological step for me to, this is a place that I belong, because in my mind, I'm convinced. So this place where we were, it closed late at night. And I said to these two brothers, I'm not going home before I become Muslim.
Yes.
So
you made up your mind.
I made up my mind. So I sat in the back seat of this old car. One brother was explaining the Shahada and Iman and things like that. And I said, okay.
You said the Shahada.
Then I said the Shahada late at night, past midnight, in the back seat of a car in Copenhagen.
Did you tell your parents?
I didn't tell them right away. I thought that...
What were they, Christian?
Traditional Christian, but my father is an atheist. My mother, she believes in one religion one week and something else the next week. That's my impression anyway. And I thought that, okay, if I wait by telling them, I might have some good arguments because I've been presented with a good argument. So let's say I wait a month or two and I will get myself together. I'll have all these arguments. Maybe they will be convinced as well. That was what I was thinking. I remember 2-3 days after, I haven't eaten anything because I was afraid that, you know, the knife from the butter have become close to some pork or something like that. So I didn't eat anything, maybe bread and cornflakes. So after 2-3 days, I said, okay, I need a decent meal. So I took my bike. I was 19 and I went to Copenhagen. My parents live around 10 kilometers from here. Bought myself some halal meat, went back home, started doing some cooking. And I remember my father, he came to me when I was in the kitchen. And obviously they knew that I met these brothers and have frequently discussions every day. And he was looking at me and he was looking at my food because usually we used to eat together. So my mother or my father was preparing food and me and my brother and everyone was eating together. So it was a little bit odd, a little bit strange. I was standing there 3 o'clock in the afternoon making my own dinner. And my father was looking at me, looking at the food, maybe some different taste. I'm not sure. But anyway, so he asked me, you haven't become Muslim, haven't you? Because he thought that this was a strange scenario. And I said to myself, I'm not going to be a Muslim starting lying. So I said to my father, yes, I converted. And he just walked away.
Wow.
I had my own dinner, went back to my room. A few hours afterwards, my parents was eating. And I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to be that son who is going to be isolated just because I have changed my view of life.
You don't have to anyway.
Yeah. So I went up to the table while my father, mother, and my younger brother, they were eating, sitting down at the table, and completely silence. You could just hear the knife and the fork on the plate. And my younger brother, he's a little bit provocative. So he said something provocative, just like, are you going to pray every day and have your ass up in the air, something like that, every single day? And that was just an explosion. My mom started crying. My father, he became angry and smashed the fork and the knife into the table, took the car, and ran off.
They felt they were losing you, right?
Yeah. And they did for a while. It was like a frequent discussion every day. Like, you have to adopt our values, otherwise you have to find yourself another place to live.
Wow.
So there was some pressure, and I do understand my parents because, you know, young people, they choose something one day and something the other day, and there are trends and all these kind of things. So I think after maybe 6 months, they found out that the way that I lived and I took Islam seriously and so on. So they thought, okay, he's holding on to it. They didn't give up the fight, but they accepted in a way my choice.
How was your relationship with them?
It's very good, and now it's many years ago. But at the time, after maybe 6 months, I choose to move out and find my own little place. So my relationship with my parents was not every day, but maybe once a week. Especially after I got married. My wife she's an amazing woman. She has a very good relationship with my parents as well. Especially after we got kids. I have 2 daughters.
Is she a born Muslim or is she a convert?
She's a born Muslim from original from Pakistan. Yeah. So that impact with wife and children, it made everything much more, much more better.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. So now we found a way that we can meet without alcohol, celebrating Christmas, things like that. So every opportunity I have, I go to my parents' place, having coffee, dinner, sitting with them, and so on. So I remember it took my mother, maybe around 10 years. And then she said to me, I'm actually very happy that you become Muslim, because she could see the way I treated my family.
She said that to you?
Yeah, she said that. In the past, it was something else. My mother, she said to me that it would be easier for her to accept if I came home and said that I've become homosexual.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember after maybe a year, I chose to go to Palestine with a friend of mine just to see how Muslims were living. And they thought, okay, he's going down there. He's not coming back. He will explode himself. That was the impression. So it was a hard time. But
how was the trip to Palestine? Was it helpful?
It was amazing. At some point, I didn't want to go back. It was a brother here from Copenhagen. He set it up. We had a discussion, and me and another convert brother, we said that we would like to live with the Muslim families to see how Islam is in daily life and so on. So he said, maybe I could arrange something for you. He came back a few weeks after and said, if you want to, you can come to Hebron in Palestine. I knew a good family there, and you can spend maybe 4 weeks with them. And we looked at each other and said, okay, well,
let's go.
Yeah. So we went to the airport, Tel Aviv, and the only thing we knew was that there was being a man with a sign saying Musa. That's the only thing we knew about the trip. So went there, we were picked up, we lived with the family, we went to Al-Quds a few times. Actually, it was like a studying trip. So we were studying Islam maybe 2, 3, 4 hours a day for a month. And different brothers were introducing us to different subjects and so on. It was a fantastic time.
How did you communicate with them? In English?
That was the problem, because at the street where we lived were like maybe 3, 4 houses, the same family. And we lived with a family who couldn't speak anything else than Arabic. So we were communicating with maybe the 10, 20 words we knew in Arabic and
sign language maybe.
And, yeah, but we managed. Yeah. And later, every day, the uncles, the other brothers and so on who were able to speak English, they came home and they could help with the sort of different things.
Did you maintain contact with them?
Yes, but not as frequent as we wanted to. Yeah, I've always thought about going back, and actually about going back, it was very sensitive for me, because we were picked up in a car on Jewish plates, and the driver, who we didn't know, he said, "This is it's better for you if we drive in a Jewish car, because we'll get by the..."
It's true.
Yeah.
That's what they do sometimes. Yeah.
So we're sitting in that car, and I remember the night when we were going home, there were maybe 40, 50 people from the same family, children, parents, elderly. Every one of them, they came out on the street, the balcony, like
to say goodbye.
To say goodbye. And it was very emotionally. So we're sitting in the back seat of this car and driving. And maybe 10 minutes after, I just started crying.
Wow.
Because I was going back, and didn't know this was a fantastic trip, fantastic people, and they were so welcoming and so on. So the driver, he turned around and said, why is he crying? And I couldn't even speak. So the brother, he started speaking on my behalf, and he said what I was thinking. He said that, we come from a cold Western life in a way. People have enough with their own families, and everyone is a little bit selfish. And here you come and you see warm, welcoming people, and having the only relationship we have with these people are the Iman and the Aqeedah of Islam. And yeah, it was very emotional. So he spoke on my behalf. We're going back to people who don't know their neighbors, and everyone is obsessed with their own life and own material success and so on. And here it's different. Yeah. They asked us, they said, if you want to, and I believe that there was sincere, they said to us, if you want to, you can stay. We'll make sure that you have a job, you'll have a wife, you'll have a family. Just say, we'll do it. And yeah, it was tempting, but of course you have your responsibility towards your own family back in Denmark and so on. So
well, I'm glad you have all these sweet memories from my hometown, Al Khalil.
Yeah.
Well, Brother Musa, it's been really a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.